We was having a good.
Hey. Hold on. We're live. Y'all do not want to miss this interview. Bishop Aaron Williams.
All right. Special edition of Bishop Presents Kingdom, but I have with me Durrell Douglas and I have F.J. Jones, yes, in the house. I'm going to start with F.J. We just had a great interview with Durrell and we're going to get back to him, but I want to talk to you, F.J. Jones. She's running for Justice of the Peace, Brazoria County, Precinct 4, Place 2. I've noticed you said my top priority is transparency. That's what we were going to talk about here, transparency. What does that mean when F.J. Jones say transparency, what do the voters need to know when you make Justice of the Peace?
In any campaign that I've run, transparency is always my top priority. And what I mean is that I'm going to make sure that the people that I swear to serve are always knowledgeable about what's really going on. That is my top priority, because as an educator, knowledge is nothing if you don't share it.
Right.
If it just stops with me and I'm the only person who knows, that does nothing for the people that I raise my right hand and swear to take care of. It does nothing for them if I'm the only person who knows everything.
So some call accountability. Huh? You count to the people. Yes, and that's what we need. Durrell, we talked about prison and we started with your life and your background. Tell the audience again about your upbringing. I quoted what you said on Facebook about, with the exception of the fourth grade. We're still trying to figure out what happened in the fourth grade. But all my teachers were black and this was really, what really hits home to me. You said the school was an extension of the family, not a separate issue. And talk about that with them.
Absolutely. So me growing up, like when I think about power structures and when I think about the people that I looked up to, the people that taught me, they were all black. They looked like me. I remember on Fridays, walking by the administrators' offices and they were playing Magic Live at 5. They were playing Magic 102, just like my parents did. And so when you grow up with a firm foundation where, you understand who you are, you know who you are, when you get older, you're less likely to be impacted by like what you hear externally, right? And so up until the fourth grade, like all my teachers were black. And yes, the school was sort of an extension of home, right? Like there's a certain bond that happens between black people, right? Like there's a certain, you ever been in a meeting and it's just one other black person and some stuff goes down? Y'all don't have to say a lot. You can just look across the room and a whole conversation just happened, right? And so there's power in that happening, in that same type of relationship at the school. When you have teachers who were once black students themselves, when you have teachers who understand what their students are going through because they have black children themselves or because they're black themselves, it's very, very powerful.
It had an impact on your life throughout your life. FJ, what does your court look like? When I go into an FJ court, because justice to one person is just, different people have different, definition of how to define justice. When I walk in your court, because you're going to get justice of the peace, we already claimed.
Yes, we.
You're going to get. What does that? How do you administer your justice?
You know what? I said this to someone one time, and I'm not, and it was. This is the way I see it. That I could walk into my courtroom blindfolded, listen to the facts of the case, and make the same decision I would have made had I been able to see who I was looking at.
Wow.
That is what justice is. That is why the lady at the top of the scale has a blindfold on her eyes, because it does not matter what the people in front of you look like. Just as long as when the case is over, those scales are balanced.
There you go.
That's what justice is all about.
And I know that you feel that you're not running for it because you're entirely because of a label that you make here. You want the vote because you want to earn the people's trust that's giving you the vote.
Absolutely,
Right. Yeah.
absolutely. I've lived in my town for the last 14 years. And in that 14 years, I have done nothing but serve my community. I have worked through the ranks. I started out as the pool and splash pad chair committee chairperson. I did that for like 10 years. And then the HOA board went through this transition from developer to residential run board, ran for that, okay? And then got a little interested in the MUD. Most people don't even know what that is, but municipal utility district, and ran for that. And I now sit on that. And for me, when you start to learn how government really works, you realize how connected everything is. And you can't go from one level to the other without learning something. And so once I got to the MUD, I was like, well, look, I looked at the JP position because I don't apply for jobs I'm not qualified for. I'm just gonna put that out there. I am incredibly qualified for this position. Okay? So what a JP does is they look at the circumstances of a situation, they look at the law that applies, and they apply the law in the way it needs to be applied to a certain situation. I am a trained diagnostician. I have a master's degree in education. And what I do is determine if a student has a learning disability or some sort of intellectual disability, formerly known as mental retardation. There are laws that are around that. There are laws that are written that tell me exactly what the criteria of a learning disability is and what the criteria of an intellectual disability is. And I take those laws and I apply it to a certain situation in children's lives. I already make life determining decisions about young people every day. I do that right now. So when I get to the JP position, I'm already qualified for that. And I'm not sitting there because I feel like I'm entitled. I'm sitting there because I have done the work to get
the
there.
heart of justice. Oh, man. You got to share this story. We got a protest. We got a protest coming. I want to frame it like we got a protest coming up, and a lot of people, a lot of grassroots people, they just feel, look on TV, they see protests. It doesn't mean anything. It's just another march, another rally. What does it mean? We got a protest coming on August 28th, organized by Robert Williams. Tell us how, working as correctional officer, how the story you just told us of how protests, your voice matters. You have power in numbers, and we really care about the grassroots and how the grassroots can make
Which
change.
one?
The storm when they came together. Yeah.
So back in 2007 was Hurricane Ike, or 2008? Long story short, I was a sergeant at the Central Unit, which recently closed, but it's the one that's in Sugar Land. So it's like on the corner of Highway 90 and Highway 6. And, when a storm is coming, when a hurricane is coming, TDC usually moves its inmates, like from one place to another, so that, you're basically around units that can withstand the wind, right? So I was on Central. It was built in like the early 1900s, so it was brick and stone and concrete. It was good. And so we had to make room for the other units around us that were going to send inmates. So we had 273 inmates that were at the trustee camp. And trustees are basically inmates who've reached a certain level where they're trusted, and they're at the trustee camp. But the trustee camp is kind of like, it's a tin building. Wind would knock it over, right? So we had to bring them in. And on most TDCJ units, there's an industry, right? So on Jester 3, there's a garment factory. On Darrington, they're making tires. At Ramsey 3, they have a canning plant.
So they don't just make license plates?
Oh, no, they're making all kinds of stuff, and they're making a lot of money, too. But on Central, we had the soap factory. And so they cleared out the soap factory, and there was an area roughly the size of a basketball court. And we lined up cots for the 273 inmates that were going to go, and we moved them all over. And at first, it started out pretty cool. There were these 2 orange big igloo-like container coolers with ice and water, and they would do that like 3 times a day. And there were 2 toilets and 2 urinals, right, for these 273 people. Tough accommodations, but these are trustees, and they're working with it. Eventually, the storm comes, and we're still dealing with it, but sort of the care started drifting off, right? So I remember at one point, as far as the water, it was no longer ice and water coming 3 times a day. It started just being water, right? And so the water was warm, and so, okay. And then one of the toilets went out, and so we had one toilet and the 2 urinals, and then the other toilet went out, right? The other toilet went out, like the next day, and now, so there's just the 2 urinals, and then not only was it warm water from the cold water with the ice, now they're not even bringing water, right? And so, as these different things would happen, of course the inmates were coming up to me, and they were saying, Sarge, hey, what's up with the toilet? And I would hop on the phone, I would call the desk, hey, can we get maintenance out here? The toilet is stopped up, And even though I cared, I wasn't enough, right? Like, nothing was really changing. And so finally, and I was working the night shift, so this is 5P to 5A. One night, this inmate comes up to me, and he's like, Sarge, it's about to go down. He kind of said it under his breath, and I was like, what's about to go down? And he just walked away. Well, not too long after that, we were on generator power, obviously. Somebody pulled the cord to the generator, and it went pitch black. And the 273 inmates are now walking out of the soap factory. And so first mine was like, do I gas the first row of them? But it's hot, right? And if I gas them, I'm gassing myself. And that's going to be chaos anyway, right? And so I just hopped on the radio. And I was just like, the inmates are leaving. The inmates are leaving the soap factory. They walking out. They are walking out. I need help in the soap factory. And so, the warden hopped on, and he was like, 4001, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he did his thing, and he copped in his car, and he drove around to where the soap factory was, and they were just out there, and he found who appeared to be the leader. Right? And so now there's the senior warden talking to this inmate, right? And what was interesting was the inmate was not like, he was like,
right, yeah.
I could tell what they were saying, but it was very much.
You're right. It wasn't no kowtowing.
Right? And I'm like, whoa, okay. Well, guess what? I don't know what was said. I don't know how it happened, but the next day, there were 2 igloo coolers with ice and water. There were 2 fixed toilets, and there were 2 urinals that worked. And at the time, I'm 5'5", I'm short, so it's a little bit of Napoleon complex, and I was like 22 at the time, so I was like young, trying to prove myself, and these inmates that embarrassed me, like I can't handle. But looking back, that was very necessary, because although, I was doing my best to address their issues, I was ineffective. They were complaining to me, and I was hopping on the phone, but nothing was getting done. And I think much in the same way, we have a lot of people who are in spaces that we're often complaining to, and they're hopping on the phone, but nothing's getting done. And so now, we gotta walk out, right? And talk to a warden. Yeah. And when we do, there's no, right? But it's
that's it.
Right. That's what we gotta do.
That's it, man.
As a
incredible story.
I'm a pastor. That's incredible. I'm a pastor, and I know FJ, you've been going around to a lot of churches getting endorsement. And one thing Dr. King said, I always remind of his Birmingham letter. He said, I'm very disappointed in the church. Your laxity, you're tingling, you're sounding brass and tingling cymbals. Do you feel? I know you've been going getting endorsements from a lot of local church leaders. What more? What can you tell the churches right now to help you in this election? Because I know that you're a candidate that's qualified, the heart, and the experience. What would you tell them to tell their congregation to get them off the couch to say, you know what? Because I believe a vote for you is a vote for CJR, criminal justice reform.
Absolutely.
How would you share that? What's your message to them?
My message is just what those 273 trusted prisoners did. They got up and they walked out. And what I would like pastors to do is to share with them that when they tell them to get up and walk to the voting booth. Because that is the place where it matters the most. I often write on my page, and I haven't said it in a while, but voting is you voicing your opinion without ever saying a word. When you go in that voting booth, it's between you and that machine, and that's it. So you can't expect voting to be a spectator sport. It's not the thing that someone else can do. Because as we've seen, if we sit down and wait for someone else to do it, we wind up getting somebody else's candidate. Y'all know where I'm going. Y'all know where I'm headed. So at the end of the day, one of the things that I want to do as a JP, because I'm going to always be an educator, is that I would like to educate the community. I want to have something called what I like to call the Know Your Rights series. So the first thing that I'd like to do as a JP is hold a workshop, right, for the community, for everybody. And that's what I want people to understand, that I'm about opportunity for everybody. Everybody to understand what proper courtroom decorum is. I want everybody to know what kind of documentation is admissible in a court. I want everybody to know what the process is to file a complaint. I want everybody to have the knowledge that they need in order to conduct themselves in this system that we have.
And not just power. And I can tell you too, I would say to the pastors who you pastors who don't like politics in your pulpit, where you're making a statement, it's not about politics, it's about candidates who are serving your constituency. And for a pastor to not tell anybody who to vote for, I don't believe in that, but to not promote voting and being active, engaged in the community, where you're telling the opposite, then don't get engaged, and then just as you said, then just what you're voting for, in my opinion, is the status quo, and the status quo won't work in this society right now.
That's right. You know what, Robert Williams said something one time, and I'm just going to go ahead on and give him the credit for saying this, because I think it was actually a wonderful thing. He said to me one day, he said, FJ, Dr. Martin Luther King didn't write the Civil Rights Act. That had to be done by legislators, right? But it was through his actions and the actions of others that made the Civil Rights Act be not only written, but passed. And I need my pastors in the African American churches to understand how powerful their position really is. And when you keep societal issues, because I'm not going to say politics, when you keep real societal issues outside of your pulpit, you are essentially, because there was another story that was shared that we didn't share, what you are doing is ignoring them. And they're not going away, because your people are coming to your church seeking some sort of respite from societal issues. So if you refuse to address those societal issues other than to just say, pray on it,
watch out.
are you really doing your congregation a service?
And I go deeper than society. I said human rights issues. These are human rights issues. We don't have we got a lot of people in prison. Is it a criminal problem, or is it a drug abuse problem, or a mental problem? Because a lot of people in our prison, they have mental issues and medical issues, and it's really not a criminal issue, but we've made it into a criminal issue. So if you don't, as a man of God, a woman of God, if you don't want to talk about human rights issues, then what are we doing? Because the Bible I read, somebody I know came to seek and save them that was lost. He came for the least of these among us. And I tell you, that's what's about. Let's talk about this rally as we close. The rally, August 28th. F.J. Jones is going to be there. Durrell Douglas is going to be there. And the organizers here, we got him working behind the scenes. And Robert Williams is there. Talk about the rally and what this criminal justice, I think, is one of the biggest issues of our time.
Absolutely. So August 28th, we're going to gather at the state capitol to talk about criminal justice reform. It's an issue that has often been ignored by a lot of elected officials and by, political parties. They'll say just enough to kind of like meet the standard, but they try to stay away from it because maybe it doesn't allow them to raise the kind of money that they want to raise, or maybe it's seen as a divisive issue. And what we have to remember is everything that Dr. King did in his time was seen as being divisive, right? Like, he was pushing the envelope. You have to remember, a lot of pastors in the Houston area, he couldn't preach when he came here, right? And so we have to remember that the only way that we're really going to impact anything is if we, the regular folk, get together and change it. And that's exactly what's going to happen on August 28th. I think it's the beginning of something that that will sort of like, that will grow, hopefully. And we'll be able to see that it doesn't take a lot of big organizations or anybody to endorse anything. It's not going to take any of the people that you would expect, because I'll tell you this, I've been down the Yellow Brick Road a couple of times to see the Wizard. And a lot of times when I got down that Yellow Brick Road and I peeked behind the curtain, wasn't too much there. And I started to realize, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
If that's all that is, we could do that. And I think that's essentially what we are going to have to do. No longer will we sit back and wait for permission. We will write our own platform. We will drive our own justice. And we will show society what it's supposed to look like. We won't wait for permission. And I think when we do that, we can change the world. I think we've reached a pressure point. I've gotten to the point now to where I don't even watch the news. Like, I flip past it. It's gotten to the point where, okay, Trump said, what about who? Right? Like, we get it. He's done this over and over. He's blown his dog whistle. We get it, right? I think, how are we going to respond to it? Because Dr. King had Bull Connor, right? And how did Dr. King, how did those, and I really hate to put it all on Dr. King, because there were so many other people that were so important to what went on. And I think also here's another piece that I want to point out. The movement is not necessarily going to be perfect. Let's not forget that Bloody Sunday, when it happened, Dr. King felt bad that he wasn't there. There was this thing that was going to happen. He didn't get to go, and he watches on the news as people are bloodied at the hands of Bull Connor. Little did he know, little did they know, that was the conscious call of a nation that ended up waking up people that up until that point didn't care. It was until they saw that they got up. That a lot of times what may seem like a slip or a trip or a fall is actually part of the process. When I think back to my 5 years working at the prison, I glaze over it now. It fits into my story. But let me tell you, every single day that I woke up and went to work, and especially towards the end, I questioned God. People would tell me, you don't seem like you belong here. And I used to say to myself, I agree. Right? I've been applying. Who's going to hire, brother? Right? But little did I know, I would meet people and hear the stories and see firsthand the things that I would need years later in order to address those things. And it totally had a great impact on my life today. And I think everything that is happening today is inspiring someone to do something. So you're watching this video. Maybe you don't go to rallies, and maybe you can't show up, but you can click the donate link. You may not be able to show up, but you can invite somebody else. Because years from now, you will look back and wonder what role you would have played.
Amen. LJ, I want you to cover around. I want to talk about two things, because I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up too, because Constance Jones made me aware of this. The criminal justice reform, but also talk about another issue that really is buried: women's health. Texas, I found out, is the third leading state for African Americans women mortality. You heard me right. Texas is the third state with African American women having high mortality rates. Talk about that in the rally, because it's a huge thing.
The first thing that I want people to understand about the women's health and mortality and during childbirth is that you wouldn't think that in a country like the United States of America, that women would still be dying in childbirth. That is something that most people think happens somewhere else. But it happens here all the time. And not only does it happen here all the time, it happens to women of color all the time. And it's all tied into the ability to have access to proper health care. I mean,
income, money.
At the end of the day, I have bore and birthed 2 boys. And I will tell you that was no small feat. But I was fortunate enough to be able to get the care that I needed. And in fact, something interesting happened during both births. One kid got stuck.
I did.
And had I not been in a position, right, where I had, because I had a doctor in the room, it was such that they had to call somebody else to come help me. And I remember looking at my mother standing over my face, and I'm saying to her, mouthing to her, because I cannot breathe. And that is what I'm saying to my mother. I can't breathe. I'm mouthing to her, literally, I can't breathe. And my mother, unfortunately, she passed a year after that child was born. I remember her blowing in my face. And I looked at her, and I remember thinking, because of course I couldn't talk because I couldn't breathe. I'm going to get you for this when I get out here. So you have to understand that, you know, women having children is a very, you know, people make it all kinds of nostalgic and all that, but I'm here to tell you that there is something to be had about bringing a child into this world. And my second son, I'm not really sure what happened, but I know that I went in the room and they was having an exam, and these people looked at me and said, that baby is not coming out. We're going to have to cut that baby out. So my husband is standing there and he's telling me all of the things that was going on, but I'm hearing the doctors talk about how expensive private school is. So I'm saying to you that women's health, especially the health of African Americans, and that ties into, you know, the government's defunding of Planned Parenthood. Let's get rid of, you know, it's always about the focus of abortion. This organization it's a whole bunch of organizations that let's just be honest, there's a whole lot of them that give abortions, but that's only 3% of what Planned Parenthood does, because I remember as a teenager having to go and utilize the services of Planned Parenthood where I grew up, because I needed to see about myself. And I wasn't pregnant, and I wasn't looking for an abortion, and I wasn't doing any of that. I needed to make sure that I was physically sound. And I think that if people actually saw that was more of what Planned Parenthood and organizations like Planned Parenthood were doing, then they'd be less inclined to be focusing on this one thing. And it's, you know, really about the woman's right to choose, because women, you know, most people I think see like women having abortions because they just having them, they using them like birth control, and that's not true. I know plenty of married people who have had to terminate a pregnancy for one reason or another. And so, and it had nothing to do with, oops, we made a mistake and we just want to be clear. No, you know, and that was a very, very tough decision for them. Yet, it is their decision. It is not the role of the federal government to decide what happens within these families. And so, that's where I'm at with women's health. And it's unfortunate that African American people, in most instances, health-wise, education-wise, criminal justice-wise, they always getting a short end of the stick. I mean, it just seems that way as an African American woman.
In the rally.
And the rally.
You're gonna be there.
Oh, I'm gonna be at the rally. I'm gonna let me just say this about the rally and criminal justice in general. If you have judge reform, you don't need bail.
There you go.
If you have judge
That right there.
you don't need juvenile justice reform.
Keep going.
There you go.
So I'm going to urge you
I think
that
that's a hoop
on
right there.
October
That's a hoop right there.
22nd through November 2nd and Election Day is November 6th, I'm going to urge you to vote for Justice of the Peace, Precinct 4, Place 2 in Brazoria County for F.J. Jones. My website is www.justvotejones.com. And all of my contact information is listed on my Facebook page, Elect F.J. Jones for Justice of the Peace. And I'll be happy to have any discussion or talk to anyone or come to any meeting to discuss these views.
Because you're wide open, you're transparent, and you got a heart of God. You're there. F.J. Jones, Durrell Douglas. Well, you're going to see him again in August 28th at this rally organized by the great Robert Williams of Swinney, Texas. And I want to say this, Brazoria, Texas. I'm from Brazoria. We have an opportunity to get a judge. Let's put her in place and on the bench because our county needs it. And this was a special edition of Bishop Presents Kingdom Builders, and appreciate you joining us.
Out.